Good Saturday morning, everyone, and welcome into today's daily Bible reading for February the 18th. Today we are reading together in Exodus chapter 4. I appreciate you tuning in today. Hope that you've had a great week. And let's get into our text today as we are continuing the second half of God's introduction and instruction to Moses concerning the part that he is going to play in the redeeming of Israel from the captivity of Egypt. Remember, they have been enduring harsh labor and slavery at the hands of the Egyptians because of a Pharaoh who became scared of them, who did not know Joseph or his God. Therefore, he put the harsh labor upon them in the work that they had to do in building up cities and such. Then whenever that didn't work, he wanted the midwives to put to death the male children on the birth stool. That didn't work. And then finally, it was that they were to throw the male babies into the river. And we don't exactly know the extent to which that was successful, but we do know that it was unsuccessful for one special boy who ended up being put in the river, yes, but in an ark of sorts, so that he might drift down river. He is found by Pharaoh's own daughter, and Pharaoh plays a part then in raising the one who is going to be the future deliverer of the family of Abraham from Egypt. They have grown now into a mighty nation. Some thinking between 2 and 3 million based upon the 600,000 men that are identified within the book of Exodus. And now it is time for them to be delivered from Egypt. Their cry has come up to God because of the difficult working conditions and just the harsh environment in which they're living. He has appeared to he has appeared to Moses in the wilderness of Midian. Actually, he is specifically at Mount Horeb or Mount Sinai. And it is here he appears to Moses in a burning bush. Moses is intrigued by this, goes forward. The Lord speaks to him, lets him know who it is that he is speaking to, that he is on holy ground. He needs to remove his sandals. And then he begins to instruct him concerning what is going to happen in the future. Well, we've seen a couple of times in this discussion between Moses and God is that Moses is, first of all, he is saying, well, whenever they asked who I am or who I'm coming on behalf of, who will I say? And he says, well, you will say that I am that Yahweh, that I am who I am is coming to rescue you here in this moment. And eventually, once we get down to chapter 4, again, not the best of chapter breaks here. I kind of wish it would have continued on so that we could see this conversation as it happens as a whole. Maybe a better chapter break would have been after chapter 4 and verse 17. Nonetheless, we're continuing on in that conversation. The first objection was, well, whenever I go to them, who am I to say sent me? Well, you're going to say Yahweh, I am who I am, the God of your fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob is the one who has sent you. Well, now Moses has another question in verse number 4 of chapter 1, or excuse me, verse number 1 of chapter 4. Moses answered, well, what if they don't believe me? So what if they don't believe me whenever I say that Yahweh has sent me? What if they won't believe me and will not obey me, but say, the Lord did not appear to you? Well, then the Lord Yahweh asked him, what is that in your hand? A staff, Moses replied. Throw it on the ground. The Lord said, so Moses threw it on the ground, and it became a snake, and Moses ran from it. Then the Lord told Moses, Yahweh told Moses, stretch out your hand and grab it by the tail. So he stretched out his hand and caught it, and it became a staff in his hand. This will take place, he continued, so that they will believe that Yahweh, the God of their ancestors, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob, has appeared to you. In addition, Yahweh said to him, put your hand inside your cloak. So Moses put his hand inside his cloak, and when he took it out, his hand was diseased, resembling snow. Put your hand back inside your cloak, Yahweh told him. So he put his hand back inside his cloak, and when he took it out, it had again become like the rest of his skin. If they will not believe you and will not respond to the evidence of the first sign, they may believe the evidence of the second sign. And if they don't believe even these two signs or listen to what you say, take some water from the Nile and pour it on the dry ground. The water you take from the Nile will become blood on the ground. But Moses replied to Yahweh, please, Lord, I have never been eloquent, either in the past or recently, or since you have been speaking to your servant. because my mouth and tongue are sluggish. Yahweh said to him, who placed a mouth on humans? Who makes a person mute or deaf, seeing or blind? Is it not I, Yahweh? Now go, I will help you speak, and I will teach you what to say. Moses said, please, Lord, send someone else. Yet it's then that Yahweh's anger burned against Moses, and he said, isn't it Aaron the Levite, your brother? I know that he can speak well, and also he is on his way here to greet you. He will rejoice when he sees you. You will speak with him and tell him what to say. I will help you both and him. I will help both you and him to speak, and will teach you both what to do. He will speak to the people for you. He will serve as a mouth for you, and you will serve as God to him, and take this staff in your hand that you will perform the signs with. Then Moses went back to his father-in-law Jethro and said to him, please let me return to my relatives in Egypt and see if they are still living. Jethro said to Moses, go in peace. Now in Midian, Yahweh told Moses, return to Egypt, for all the men who wanted to kill you are dead. So Moses took his wife and sons, put them on a donkey, and returned to the land of Egypt. And Moses took God's staff in his hand. Yahweh instructed Moses, when you go back to Egypt, make sure you do before Pharaoh all the wonders that I have put within your power, but I will harden his heart so that he won't let the people go. And you will say to Pharaoh, this is what Yahweh says, Israel is my firstborn son. I told you, let my son go so that he may worship me. But you refuse to let him go. Look, I'm about to kill your firstborn son. On the trip at an overnight campsite, it happened that Yahweh confronted him and intended to put him to death. So Zipporah took a flint, cut off her son's foreskin, threw it at Moses' feet, and said, you are a bridegroom of blood to me. So he let him alone. And at that time she said, you are a bridegroom of blood, referring to the circumcision. Now the Lord had said to Aaron, go and meet Moses in the wilderness. So he went and met him at the mountain of God and kissed him. And so the Lord told Moses to go. He met him and kissed him. Moses told Aaron everything Yahweh had sent him to say, and about all the signs he had commanded him to do. Then Moses and Aaron went and assembled all the elders of the Israelites. Aaron repeated everything Yahweh had said to Moses and performed the signs before the people. The people believed, and when they heard that Yahweh had paid attention to them and that he had seen their misery, they knelt low and worshiped. And that is Exodus chapter 4. Again, within this text, we're going to see the excuses of Moses. They're going to continue here. And again, if we're going to be gracious, we might give the benefit of the doubt that, you know what? Yeah, they might not believe him. That this random guy shows up and say, hey, your God's going to deliver you. Well, who is that God? Well, it's Yahweh. And we might understand that they might say, well, how do we know that Yahweh has sent you? So he gives them the signs to prove that with the staff stretching it or turning into a snake, and then the hand going into the cloak, coming out as white as snow. A lot of people assume leprosy. We'll just say a skin disease for certain, and then put it back in there and pulls back out again, and it's good then. And if that doesn't work, then you're going to take some water from the Nile, this source of life, and you're going to pour it out. It's going to turn into blood. And it's like, okay, well, you know, they might believe me that is Yahweh who sent me, and they might believe me based on the signs that Yahweh sent me. But you know, Lord, I'm really going to have a hard time speaking. I'm not the best speaker out there. You know, is this him saying that he has some sort of a speech impediment? Maybe is it that he forgot how to speak either to his people or forgot how to speak to the Egyptians? Or is it that he is I can't read my writing now. What did I write here? Maybe he spent too much time in the field doing blue collar work instead of doing, you know, the white collar work that he might have done for 45 years within Pharaoh's courts. The Lord says, hey, don't worry about that. I'm the one who created the mouth of the person. I can control all that. I will give you everything you need in order to accomplish the job. So at every point as Moses is working through this text, as we're working through this text with Moses, God shows him everything. He gives him what is necessary for him to accomplish the task of going and being the leader of this great Exodus. But then we get to verse number 13. And at this point, it is just a flat out refusal. No, I won't go. No, I won't go. And at this point, we read for the first time in their interaction with one another that the Lord's anger burned against Moses. The Lord's anger burned against Moses. And he said, isn't Aaron the Levite your brother? I know he can speak well. I've been trying to, I remember doing some study here in Exodus before, and I cannot find the resource in which I read this, but there was something that I read that gave the indication that maybe at this point, it was just going to be Moses who was going to get to be kind of the leader and priest of Israel, that everything was going to be his to do. But because he refused to serve as this tool for God, and because he kept making all these excuses, he basically disqualified himself from serving in all these roles. So now here comes Aaron, and Aaron's going to basically split the work with him. But not just split the work, but also in some sense split the glory, split the opportunities and the blessing it was to be able to serve God in this incredible way throughout the Exodus. And that's what God does. God says, hey, your brother's going to help you with this. And I will not only, just as I said that I would help you in what you were going to do, I'm also going to let you know right now that I also am going to help both of you. I will help both of you, both you and him, to speak. And will teach you both what to do. You're going to have the staff. Again, Moses, you have everything you need in order to accomplish this task. There's no reason for you not to be ready to do what I want you to do. Well, at this point, Moses goes back to Jethro and tells him, it shows a level of respect to Jethro, asked him, and reminiscent of Jacob and his family to Laban. But here he goes back and he says, please let me return to my relatives in Egypt and see if they are still living. I wonder if Moses here is kind of ducking what just took place. Maybe it's easier for him to say this instead of to say what actually happened. That, hey, Yahweh met me in a burning bush and he told me that this is going to be something that I need to go do. Maybe he just doesn't have a lot of confidence in saying what needs to be said here in this moment. But Jethro, to his credit, tells him to go in peace. Again, while they're in Midian, Yahweh spoke to Egypt, spoke to Moses and told him, maybe gave him a little bit more confidence, saying, hey, just to give you a little bit of a pick me up, to give you some courage, know that everybody who wanted to kill you is dead. So at that point, Moses takes his wife and his sons, which is interesting because we only have heard of Gershom at this moment. He has another son, Eleazar. Now, that's not a big deal. The biblical author does not have to tell us every single child that Moses has had. We are filled in right here with this fact, and that's fine. He has God's staff in his hand, and he has the Lord's instructions as well, that whenever you get to Egypt, make sure that you show Pharaoh all the wonders that I have put within your power. Again, that I have put within your power. But know that I will harden his heart. And that's a lot of debates. I'm not going to get into that right now because that's going to come up later on and we can talk about that some more. Then he basically says, I just know he's not going to let my people go. And you're going to continue to tell him that you will let my people go. But he's going to say, no, I'm not going to let your people go. And eventually I'm about to kill your firstborn son. That's the message that he's going to give to Pharaoh eventually. So he heads off to Egypt with that in mind. But then we have a very interesting, very strange, it's just the lack of detail that's given to us in verses 24 through 26 really just leaves a lot to be desired. I wish there was more detail here that gave us background into understanding what exactly is going on. Well, verse 24, it says that while they're at an overnight campsite, says that Yahweh confronted him. I believe that's referencing Moses, that Yahweh confronted Moses and intended to put Moses to death. What? Where did that come from? How is it that we've had all this discussion about everything that he's going to do, and then as he sets out on his way, now God is going to try to kill Moses. Many people think that he's become deathly ill or something at this moment, but that is purely conjecture. But it's also very interesting that as Moses is at the brink of death, which this has some parallels and echoes back to his youth. In some senses, he was at the brink of death with his parents. It was either save him or something's going to happen. And his mom acted there in that moment, put him in the river. Well, here another woman steps up and she takes a flint, a piece of stone, sharp stone, and she goes and she cuts off the foreskin of her son and throws that at Moses's feet and calls him a bridegroom of blood. And then it says, so he let him alone. I believe that's saying that God let Moses alone. And she refers to this circumcision, or because of it, refers to Moses as a bridegroom of blood. So what in the world is going on here? I think the easiest explanation, most logical explanation here is that Moses had failed to carry out the rite of circumcision. Think about this. Here comes Moses, and he is the direct representative, the divinely appointed representative of Yahweh to go to his people and to deliver them from this captivity. How much sense would it make for someone who himself has not kept the rite of circumcision and who has not seemingly entered himself into the covenant family because of him failing to practice this? How much sense would it be for this man to go and to lead out God's covenant family? Circumcision was a big deal. Genesis 17 tells us that it is the sign of God's covenant with Abraham's family. At this point, it seems as if Moses had not done what was proper to make sure his family was a part of God's family. Why? I don't know. Maybe at some point in the past, it was a concession to Zipporah. Who knows? But at this point, she acts, she does what is necessary, and because of her behavior, Moses is spared. Now, at this point, I'm pretty sure we don't see Zipporah and the sons in the picture again until Genesis 18. It's going to say later on that post the Exodus, Jethro is going to come and brings with him Zipporah and their sons, Gershom and Eleazar. So maybe at this point, because of this interaction, maybe it is at this point that Moses does send them back, because obviously at some point they weren't sent back. And it says in that text of Genesis 18 that Moses has sent them back. Maybe this is the point at which that happens. Again, not sure, but it's about the thing that makes the most sense to me here in this moment. The issue, Moses has not kept up the rite of the covenants, which was circumcision, and God could not have someone who had failed to do this to come and to be his representative to the people. Now, why does that happen in this manner? I don't know. I'll be honest. It doesn't seem to. It just seems to be in a weird spot within the text. But that's the best I can do to make sense of this particular event. Now, following this, Yahweh speaks to Aaron. Well, at least following this in the text, when actually this is probably referencing something that happens back in about verse 14. Remember, the Lord becomes frustrated, becomes angry with Moses because he won't just step up and do the job. So Yahweh says that, well, Aaron's coming to meet you. Well, here we seem to get that detail of Aaron being told that you need to go meet your brother. So they meet at the mountain of God. They meet at Horeb. They kiss one another as a sign of brotherly affection. And Moses tells Aaron everything that Yahweh had sent him to do. And he tells him about all the signs that he had commanded him to do. And at this point, Moses and Aaron go. Again, there's no mention of Zipporah or the sons here. Moses and Aaron go, and they assemble the elders of the Israelites and repeated everything that Yahweh had said to Moses. Remember, Moses said, I'm not the best speaker. Even though it's interesting, Moses is going to do the vast majority of the speaking after this. But nonetheless, the people hear this, they perform the signs, and the people believed. They believed. The initial fear that Moses had of rejection is not realized, and they are excited, they are joyous because the Lord had paid attention to them. Yahweh had heard their cries, the cries that are mentioned all the way back in chapter 2, that the Israelites groaned because of their difficult labor, and they cried out. and their cry for help because of the difficult labor ascended to God. Here they realized that those prayers, those supplications to God had been heard, and he was there to help them. Therefore, they knelt low and they worshiped. Things are starting off on a good foot so far. Once we finally get past Moses and the reluctancy that he has to go and to be this tool for Yahweh. What I want to focus on from this text is, as Moses continues to put these various excuses out there, gives many reasons why this cannot be him. This person cannot be the one to go and be this tool. I want to continue to recognize that Yahweh takes the focus off of him. He takes the focus off of Moses and puts it on himself. In verse 10, Moses basically says, I am not adequate for the task. I can't be your speaker for this task. And Yahweh replies in verse number 11 and 12, well, I am adequate for the task, and I will help you to succeed. I will do that. You think that you're not adequate. You know what? You're not right. You're not adequate. You can't do this on your own. But I can. And I'm going to strengthen you and empower you to do this work. And that's a lesson we need to take to ourselves. There are many things we face in this life that on our own we're not going to overcome. In fact, that's the trouble we were in to begin with. As we battle with sin on our own, we are overcome. And we often find ourselves defeated. But with the power that God provides, with the motivation of his grace and the hope of eternal life that he gives, and by the way of escape that he offers to us, as is written in 1 Corinthians chapter 10. With those things, we can overcome. Yes, I will freely admit that I myself am inadequate. I am. I'm inadequate in every way. But the God I serve is not. I simply need to rely upon his strength, rely upon the tools and the abilities that he provides, and do the good work that he has given me to do. May that lesson from here in Exodus chapter 4, may that be impressed upon our hearts. And may we continually lean upon the Lord's strength and give him all the glory for any success that we might experience. I appreciate so much you tuning in for this reading on this Saturday. I hope you'll tune in again in the morning as we read together from Exodus chapter 5, which is going to be the first time that Moses confronts Pharaoh, and unfortunately is going to lead to a negative result, especially in the eyes of the people, and it's just going to make the task a little bit more difficult for Moses. We'll see that tomorrow in Exodus chapter 5. Again, thanks so much for tuning in today. Have a great rest of your Saturday, everyone, and we'll be back at it again tomorrow. Take care, and God bless.